Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Startup Global Industry Roundtable on healthcare. My name is Amanda Logan, and I am the Programs Officer for Startup Global at Startup Canada. To begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land on which I am today, and it is located on the unceded and traditional territories of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe, also known as Ottawa. As we are a national organization, I would also like to acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of all Indigenous peoples. I encourage you to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional territory that you are residing on today. Startup Canada is a national nonprofit that is the gateway to Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem. We're here to connect entrepreneurs with the support, community, and tools they need to build a successful business in Canada. Startup Global is one of Startup Canada's flagship programs that supports entrepreneurs looking to export and expand their businesses internationally. From webinars to roundtables and our annual pitch competitions, this free program will help you build an international market entry strategy and plan. These industry roundtables will provide attendees with a deeper understanding of trends and best practices in their sector and will leave with actionable takeaways and resources that they can implement into their business. I would like to take a moment to thank our co-presenting partners, UPS and Export Development Canada, our ecosystem partner, Forum for International Trade Training, and our community partners, GS1, Communitech, and WeBC. At this time, I would like to pass the virtual mic over to Rowena Tang from UPS to share some opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you everyone for having me. My name is Rowena Sang, and I'm very pleased to be here for today's roundtable for healthcare in Canada. I want to first start to thank Startup Team in Canada for providing us the opportunity to be here. We've had a very long partnership, and it has only grown stronger over the years. So thank you, first of all, for supporting many entrepreneurs across the country and letting us help through their journey as well. So first off, as a leading healthcare and cold chain logistics provider, we know that true success really comes from focusing on the patient. It's not just a package. We see it as a patient. And at UPS, we also continue to invest in technology and infrastructure to really tackle the healthcare supply chain and complexities. So I don't know if you've heard, but we've recently acquired Ann Lauer Healthcare Group, which we are further showing our dedication and our expansion into our healthcare portfolio. For those of you who may not be familiar with Ann Lauer, I'm sure you might have seen trucks called ATS. That's part of that group. So it's a lot of cold chain movement. So we're really excited for this acquisition to really help further our position in the market. You can learn more about our acquisition and our capabilities at ups.com. So for now, I just want to get started with letting you know there are discounted rates on our domestic and international shipping. We're here to support you. We also have ambassadors that UPS ambassadors are also available to guide you at every step of your shipping process, whether it be domestic or export. I'd encourage all of you to visit Startup Canada, startupcan.ca/UPS to get your discount today. So I hope today's discussion will provide some useful information and ideas, and please reach out if you have any questions or opportunities we can explore together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rowena. I just threw the link you're talking about in the chat.
Yeah,
So easy for
awesome.
everyone to access. It'll also be in our resource guide that will be emailed to you after this event. So today's session, of course, is for healthcare businesses, and we're very excited to dive into this discussion. We've added the schedule of today's event on screen here, and as you can see, we're going to start off with some speed introductions from each of you attendees. So you can either do this on camera or in the chat. So if you'd like to introduce yourself on camera, please turn on your camera now. Next, we'll hear introductions from our three guest speakers, followed by about 50 minutes of a Q&A with our speakers. And then the last part of today's session will be networking breakout rooms where everyone will get a chance to connect with 2 to 3 fellow attendees, and the speakers will be in these rooms with you. We have about 35 minutes carved out for these, so we'll do 3 rounds at approximately 10 to 12 minutes each. Okay, so now we're going to get started with attendee introductions. So I don't see anyone's camera on just yet. But if you'd like to introduce yourself out loud, please turn on your camera and I will call on you, where you can share your name and your business or your business idea, or perhaps why this industry is of interest to you. If you're not comfortable being on camera, that's totally okay. You are more than welcome to introduce yourself in the chat instead. You are welcome to share your LinkedIn or business social media pages, but please note you are in no way obligated to share personal contact information. Please only share information that you're comfortable with being public. Okay, I think to get us started off, I see Nathan on my screen. Nathan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Nathan Muhlenbrook. I'm CEO and co-founder of Azimuth Imaging. We're a diagnostic imaging startup for breast cancer screening and diagnosis.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jonathan Loudon. I have a design firm in Toronto called Swave Studios, and we do UX and healthcare and industrial product design. And we're working with a couple startups. So just trying to get informed and updated.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for introducing yourself.
Thanks.
All right. Do we have any other takers who might want to introduce themselves out loud on camera? Otherwise, I encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat just so we can all know who's here and who we're speaking with. Okay. So we also encourage you, following our speaker introductions, to ask questions. You can do this either by typing your question in the chat or using the raise hand function, and we'll call on you to turn your microphone on and ask your question out loud. So, oh, I see someone else just turned on their camera. I just see the name iPhone, but if you'd like to introduce yourself, please do.
Hi, my name is Jamil. We have a startup in Vancouver. It's called Medix Digital Marketing. So I'm a business development director, and it's just the beginning, basically. So the reason why I joined, we just wanted to understand more about the startup program. Thank you.
Fantastic. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Next, I'll pass it to Alexis.
Hi, sorry, I was not ready to be on video. Um, I'm Alexis. I am starting a smart pill dispenser called Divvy. So I'm in very early stages, so I just wanted to gain any insight I could by jumping on here. That's all.
Awesome. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
You too.
Bob.
Hi, yeah, Bob Miller. I'm with Page Frame, and we're helping out seniors with technology challenges. It's a one-touch video calling device for seniors. We're past I'll say the trial and research stage. We're now in commercialization, so we're just about to get into, I'll call it a pre-seed round, and interested in understanding the program here for Startup Canada.
Fantastic. Next I see on my screen is Donald, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey Amanda, hey everybody. I'm with Bob. So I and perfect timing. I had some difficulty getting into the Zoom, but I just came in right as Bob jumped on. So that's great. So I kind of run the operational side of the business here. I've got a couple of units over my shoulder. Yeah, we're pretty excited. We've been at this about a year. We've been kind of keeping things quiet while we kind of work through product market fit and kind of refine where it's a bit of an integrated hardware software solution. So we just had a lot of pre-work that we've done over the past 12 months and closed some early deals. Gone through the friends and family kind of rounds, and we're kind of working with the Accelerator Center in Waterloo as part of our kind of our next steps. And so really excited to learn. And this is an area that we need a bit of help in.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm so glad yourself and Bob could join us today. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you to everyone who introduced themselves, and please continue to chat and introduce yourself in the chat. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers today. So first up, we are joined by Nikitha Kendyala, co-founder and CEO of Nucliq Biologics. Sorry. We're also joined by Ronen Benin, founder and CEO of Zero to One Strategic. And we're joined by Ariel Garten, CEO and founder of MUSE. So to start things off, I'm going to have each of our speakers introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their background. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Ronen to introduce himself.
Okay, hi everybody. My name's Ronen. I'm a serial technology entrepreneur based in Toronto. I have a formal education in finance, but have spent the majority of my career building tech companies in a variety of industries, from enterprise and consumer SaaS, biotech, prop tech. A lot of my businesses have been focused on the healthcare or healthcare adjacent industry, so I understand the space decently well. My current business, Zero to One Strategic, we focus on helping Canadian innovators access funding from the government. So over the years, we've built relationships with the various government and quasi-government agencies. We understand what makes them tick. We understand when the right time is to approach them, how to approach them, to make sure that the companies we're working with have the highest likelihood of success in their various applications for grants, subsidies, or tax credits.
Fantastic. Thank you. Funding always takes up so much of these conversations, so I think you'll be a great resource for our community today. Next, I'm going to pass it to Nikitha, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to be here today. I'm Nikitha. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Nucliq Biologics. My background is in research. So I've been working in research for several years, understanding how cellular biology works and then its impact at the basic science level. But then when we started this company, the impact was to understand how it's too late that a diagnosis, not necessarily everybody understands what's happening. Things start very early on. So, which we are considering at level of microbiome. So we have developed a platform that helps people understand how their microorganisms, especially the bacteria that is residing in their gut, is impacting their health at various levels. And we provide a precise dietary nutrition and probiotics for them to overcome any imbalances that they have, addressing whether it is hormonal issues or digestive issues or metabolic issues at various stages for both men and women. Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And then last but certainly not least, we are joined by Ariel. Ariel, if you would like to introduce yourself and your background.
Certainly. Hello, everybody. My name is Ariel Garten. I'm one of the founders of MUSE. My background is neuroscience, and we make MUSE, which is a beautiful device that helps you meditate, sleep, and improve your brain health. So it is a wearable. It came to market in 2014, so we've been in market for a very long time. We work both in the consumer and in the clinical and in the research zone. So we straddle multiple different markets within healthcare, both from wellness all the way to actual healthcare. And we've done probably 500,000 units sold, millions and millions and millions of dollars in revenue. So we're one of the sort of later stage gems in the Toronto healthcare ecosystem.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ariel. Okay, now we're going to open it up for a panel discussion. For those who feel comfortable, we do invite you to turn on your cameras for this portion. We have some prompt questions to start. However, we do encourage all of our attendees to ask questions as well. You can do this through the chat or by raising your hand, and I will call on you to ask your question out loud. So to start us off, first of all, thank you so much to our speakers for sharing your backgrounds and your experience in the healthcare industry. I want to overview the healthcare industry in Canada. So for any of our speakers, whoever wants to take this on first, how is the Canadian healthcare industry uniquely positioned compared to other global markets? And what advantages and disadvantages does that create for health tech entrepreneurs?
I guess I'll go first. So yeah, healthcare is definitely a bit different when you consider US or the other markets, which is a tendency that we go ahead, right? Like when we want to launch the product. We have government support in terms of the healthcare for the Canadians here. That makes, especially for a product like ours, it made different. So when we were started to do our R&D, we thought healthcare would be our first, primary consumer or people who would be considering our product. But then, considering the complexity of it and how it takes more time to integrate into the system, as it requires a lot of understanding of how your product would align with the requirements, because there is a several layers and complications when it comes to including a product, because every healthcare in province, if you see provincially, it is different. And that was one of the biggest challenges, I would say. And when we were trying to bring our product to them, it requires a different pilot that you have to do. So that's where we have opened up our product for general public than going to the healthcare, because that helped us to understand what the end user actually requires, what anybody or where it will fit. So, and when we are looking at the pilots or the requirements, every healthcare system has its own innovation space. For example, the NLHS here in Newfoundland has its own innovation labs where it allows to look at any new products that you're bringing, but it also should align with what are the problems that the current immediate problems that healthcare is facing, and how you can align with the research department there, and how it helps to integrate the product or the things that you want them to use. So understanding that problem itself, or integrating that product into the system itself, there is support differences when you go from healthcare to a healthcare. So there is pros in terms of there is that space, but then there is lack of certain resources when you want to jump between one province to the other in healthcare. So that's my experience, and that's how I've seen the interaction with the healthcare so far.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
as a startup, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, we actually just hosted a webinar last month about interprovincial trade, and it can be just as complicated as international trade sometimes.
Mhm.
A follow-up question for Ronen. As someone who works with a lot of founders, and you've obviously are a founder and have worked in the healthcare world a lot. What is a common mistake that you see founders making when they start to look at scaling past borders? And are there any lessons that you've learned from your journey?
That's a great question. Many lessons that I learned through my journey, many mistakes that I've made and that I've learned from. The biggest one I would say is mistaking market similarity for market sameness. When entrepreneurs try to scale beyond borders, they treat it more of like a export activity than establishing their business in that market, which is, in my experience, what I've learned is essential to make something really work. All the credibility that's gained in one market oftentimes needs to be regained in that new market. Of course, you can use the success you've had in the previous market or your core market as a benchmark, but I find that there needs to be very intentional effort put into that. It's not as simple as just hiring a few salespeople and going at it. Um, Interestingly enough, a business that I built in the early 2020s, it was a company called Glistener. We made sanitation equipment for handheld objects in clinical settings. Our first market, what we were building the product in Canada, but our first market was in the Middle East because we had R&D partners there, and the product did quite well in the Middle East. And then we tried to expand it into Canada as a secondary market because, our research, a lot of our research was done here, and we did a lot of our manufacturing here, but we had trouble breaking it into the Canadian market because we thought, okay, if it works there and we're doing our research here, it must work here. But the buying cycles for the healthcare system were completely different. The decision-making authority was much more decentralized here. So that's an example of a mistake that I made, just treating similar markets or what I thought were similar markets as the same.
Hmm.
I would jump in on that. So we sell to 85 countries around the world as a consumer tool, um, and each market segment is different. So as consumer, we actually have great success just on Facebook. We do localized Facebook ads in the localized language, um, and we sell quite well globally, and we can understand the trends in different areas and how to, lead on to them. It's very different than selling into a healthcare system in different countries, which is impossible to break into. Not impossible, but it takes very, very, determined approaches and making sure that you're traveling along the right regulatory path in each of those countries. We also sell into clinics, and clinics like naturopaths, chiropractors, etc., that are not regulated, they're very easy to sell into across borders in the same way that consumers are. So, we sell into clinics in Canada and the US. There's, probably wellness clinics in Ireland or in Norway that use MUSE, and they do so quite readily and easily, just like a consumer would, and there's not the same level of regulatory burden. We fit into the general wellness category of the FDA, which also means that we fit into the same category for Health Canada, and we have our CE mark, just as a general electronics tool in Europe. So we're able to play in each of those markets because we fit easily into the regulatory landscape. When you're a healthcare tool, you really need to think about how you fit into the regulatory landscape in each environment. You also need to think about data and privacy. So we sell into Canada. Our servers are located either in Canada or the US. We don't know. We use Google. They're somewhere in North America, which is not a problem when we're selling into the US, which can be a big problem when we're selling into Canada, and we're constantly asked, can you please localize your servers? And we've been able to localize one portion of our servers and convince people that that's okay, but it really is a gray area. And then when we go and we sell into Europe, and we sell our research services there, they always say that they need our servers to be in Europe, but then we go through long processes with the lawyers at each institution that we sell into, and at the end of the day, did they decide that our setup is fine and we don't need to have our service in Europe. So things that looked like they were barriers at the outset, actually, once you get through the details and you convince people that yes, we are GDPR compliant and we're able to move through those processes and sell into all of these different markets, still with our servers in North America. But it's a thorn in our side, our North American server.
Right. Wow. Yeah. I mean, those are some things that you don't even know that you might have to come across, or right, or roadblocks that you have to work through. As a follow-up for yourself, Ariel, as a company that sells globally, what has it been like, and then especially what was it like in the beginning days of developing the solution in Canada?
Yes, I mean, developing the solution in Canada is amazing. We have shred credits, which are fantastic. We have IRAP support. We have NRC. It used to be Engage grants. Now they're Alliance grants. There's lots of granting and support. There's all the regional innovation centers. Here it's Mars and OCE in Ontario. But in other jurisdictions, you have your own regional innovation centers. So, like, the support that you get is extraordinary. And so, we are able to make great use of our regional innovation centers to really guide us and mentor us and help us move to the next level. Here, we're also part of CABI, Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation out of Baycrest. That's in Ontario, but open to anyone in Canada. And they have frequent calls. That's also an amazing resource. So from a resource perspective, it's fantastic. And then when you get to move to the sales perspective, most people don't really, like, other jurisdictions don't really care that you're based in Canada. It's not a negative. It's usually a positive. It's seen very friendly. So we didn't have difficulty selling in other jurisdictions because we were based here.
Mm-hmm. How about for yourself, Nikitha? What was developing in Canada like for you?
Yeah, I agree. Similar lines with what Ariel was saying, because even for us, NRC IRAP, even still, R&D is a very big part of our current products, and there are incoming products as well. So NRC IRAP has been a huge support for us, and ACOA is the other one that we've taken the support from. ACOA is especially for the companies that are coming from Atlantic region, and provincial, of course, is a big support for us in that term. So as a developing the product and R&D support, there is definitely good resources here based in Canada. And also, when we are looking into the other countries, or we are currently operating in India as that helped us to navigate how we can reach. Even though I'm from India, I've moved to Canada 13 years ago, I don't understand how business works because I moved here as a student. So anything like Trade Commissioner Services that helped us to understand the markets across whether it's the border US or Europe. These are the markets we have looked into and tried, and India as well. So that initial steps, that support is there definitely in Canada, I would say, irrespective of where you come from, as long as you seek for it. And as Ariel mentioned, that when you're also coming from Canada, there is definitely, they're looking up to the standards, because the Health Canada regulatory is very strict, and then there is certain regulatory requirements that is looked at within Canada if you have to do business. So there's a lot of things taken care of when we are starting here, which gives a surety to other jurisdictions to look at that this product can be trusted. So which is very important, especially in healthcare when it comes to trust. That's how you build your business in any other jurisdictions as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Tatiana just shared a bunch of the resources that you each touched on in the chat. They'll also be in our resource guide, which will be emailed out to you in the following days after this roundtable. Now, on this subject, we're talking about, actually building your business in Canada. So I really would like to touch on the beginning days of your businesses, especially because, that story and your why can really inform when you start getting into funding and pitches and things like that. So for yourself, Nikitha, you hold a PhD in cancer biology and you spent years in academic research before co-founding Nucliq. What was the pivotal moment that made you say, I need to build this company? And how steep was the learning curve going from scientist to founder?
Oh, it's a roller coaster, I must say. As I was prepared for academics for sure, because that's my thought process. But I think there's multi factors that came together for us to look into, because this company was co-founded by me and my co-founder, who's also my husband. We both are scientists in our own spaces. So it was very personal that I came through, because purpose is what always led me to whatever I have been doing. So my mom was going through TB infection. That's when I've seen that she had to take several antibiotics, which impacted her gut microbiome or the gut health, right? Like how it impacts. But you don't see all of that, what's happening inside, but the emotional connect, you see that life is deteriorating. And I've seen that there is no support when you're taking so many antibiotics. And I think it comes natural when you're a researcher. You're curious what's happening, and especially when you understand at the molecular level. So I think that was the biggest purpose that was given to me, to look into the translational side of things, like how gut health is so important, and why it has to be considered. And then we landed upon gut microbiome, which was natural because my husband is a microbiologist. And that's the seed of it. But when it comes to, emerging this company and learning what and all it takes to start a business, it's a whole another story. I think curiosity remained with me, and then I love getting into unknown, which is what kept me going. So I think learning through that process of, not knowing what the revenue is versus how to handle a business, when you are talking about the marketing, when you're talking about the sales numbers, which is a lot more different. And that people skills of engaging, trying to understand what that relationship building is, and what that trust building is when you're engaging with your partners, your potential customers or potential people that you are selling out your product to, or building that relationship with them for a long-term relationship maintenance, right? So it has emerged over a period of time when you are, getting exposed to such things. And definitely there was a lot of local ecosystem, I would say, that helped me to understand all of this jargon and terminology and how a business plan works. I went through Genesis Evolution program, enterprise program, or which are available here in St. John's, Newfoundland. And TechNL is another support group that we have here that help the companies to understand whether for their new team that they are growing or the resources that they require. Bounce Health is the other. We are now also with the Emergence, which is a bioscience incubator located in PEI BioAlliance, supported by PEI BioAlliance. So, which guides the biotech companies or companies in life sciences to navigate through different things, whether it is some funding support or the mentor guidance that they would give, which is the international mentors that are present there, global mentors that are present there who would guide you through how you're selling or the focus that you need. So we just talk challenges. So any critical, feedback that helps any founder or any entrepreneur to emerge out of it. So that was my, growth or my learning through this process so far. And those were some of the resources that helped us to grow out of that. Yeah.
Mm. And what has it been like, and how do you approach business when your business comes from such a personal origin story? Does it shape the way you build your product or you make decisions and have conversations?
Definitely, yes, I would say, because we started with gut health and then it was oriented for everybody, like digestive and metabolic health. And we narrowed it down to looking at women's health, which I think, again, a personal, experience looking at how that awareness and knowledge was missing. And of course, I did not know a lot of symptoms that my mom was going through because she was also through her perimenopause to menopause phase. And integrating that thought and idea to develop another product now we have is Gut Check Vivo, serving especially for women's health, oriented in various aspects, but then it's also awareness and preventative side of things that a woman require to look at. So it definitely influences you in a way, unknowingly, subconsciously you head that direction because you are working for that purpose. So yeah, it does have influence on what we want to do and how we are shaping our services or products that are coming through. As still we are sticking to the purpose of helping people who are suffering and not knowing what's happening with them. So yeah.
Yeah, of course, of course. Thank you for sharing. And for yourself, Ariel, when you look at the beginnings of Muse, it starts with an integration of science and art. Can you talk us through the origins of the company, and then also how did having knowledge across multiple industries inform the building of Muse?
Sure. So, Muse has been a very, very long journey. I started in a research lab in 2001 with Steve Mann, one of the inventors of the wearable computer. He had an early brain-computer interface system that he was using in his lab to create musical concerts where people could control the music with your brain. So we started from the sort of arts-based approach, and we were just playing around with brain signals. And then at one point I stood back and said, this is amazing. We can actually interact with the world directly with our mind. This needs to be a product. And that started a very long road that had me and my co-founders kind of just in a basement playing around with this, figuring out what it could do, what's the business model, where will it go. In 2012, we did a big project at the Olympics where people could control your brain, control the lights on the CN Tower with their brains from across the country. So, that was another like, this really works, but what do we do with it? And then we finally recognized that around 2012, we were training people to focus and relax, to like make lights go brighter and dimmer. What we were really training them to do was to focus and relax. And so from 2012 forward, we kind of moved with bringing a product to market that could help you focus and relax. It was the beginning of the meditation upswing, so people were finally discovering meditation was a real thing. It wasn't weird and woo-woo. So we spent many years as a meditation tool, even though we could do many more things, but that was the thing that we could deliver value for consumers in doing. Muse could help you meditate by giving you real-time feedback on your brain to make meditation easier. While doing that, we also had lots of researchers that were using Muse as a clinical grade EEG. And we started talking to our customers and actually looking at their data and saw that they were using it as they were falling asleep to help them sleep better. So we made a second product, Muse S, that you could actually wear as you were falling asleep. And since we had an EEG on your head, we could track sleep and actually track sleep as effectively as a sleep lab. So that became our second big market, sleep. We now have a product that helps you fall asleep with guided neurofeedback, enhances your deep sleep by boosting your delta activity, helps you wake up at the right time with a smart alarm, and that whole Muse Sleep Suite is also used by researchers to do distributed sleep research for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autism, etc. So, what started with one thing, a cool technology, bridged into the next thing, like, ooh, we can like interact with stuff with our mind, bridged into the next thing, an actual product, which then needed a raison d'etre, which was meditation. And then from there, we were able to, over the last decade, expand out into many different markets in many different areas, starting with consumer, but then at the same time, in the back end, moving into research, moving into clinical, moving into healthcare. And probably our biggest inflection into healthcare was that Mayo Clinic started using Muse as a meditation tool in their studies in 2015. Their first studies published in 2017, 2018. And then they started using Muse as meditation and then a sleep tool to demonstrate that it improved cancer care, fibromyalgia, long COVID. And so this thing that was a wellness device all of a sudden got the credibility to really cross over into healthcare. And then with the Mayo credibility, we were able to take it to other healthcare systems and apply the same success there. So, your path may not be obvious at the get-go. Ours certainly wasn't. And we just continue to grow with each new market vertical that opens.
I love that. I love your ability to be able to shift too and continue to discover even once the product is launched. How did you navigate in the beginning investor skepticism and market disbelief in the early days? And what kept you going in a category that didn't yet exist?
There was so much investor skepticism. Oh my God. I walked in 2012. I'm 5'2". I have long hippie hair. I walked into Silicon Valley offices saying, I'm the CEO of a tech company and I have a technology that's going to let you control stuff with your mind. And I'm from Toronto. There was no acceptance of what I was doing at all. However, there was curiosity and people are like, okay, this is interesting. Okay, I'll take your meeting. And so I continued to move forward because even though people were like, this is super weird, we don't know what's going on, enough people were saying yes, 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 that I kept listening to the yeses and kind of blocking out the no's. And people would take my meeting because they're like, okay, let's see what this is about. They'd politely excuse me from my office, from their office, but in the middle they'd say what's the killer app? And then I'd be like, meditation, and they're like, yeah, right. Well, 10 years later, those very same VCs, literally the same VCs, use Muse to meditate and love it. I know this, A, because I know several of them now, we've become friends, and B, I was actually giving a talk at a brain conference and told the story and said, yeah, many VCs just laughed me out of my office and years later used it to meditate. And a guy in the office put his hand up and said, I'm one of those VCs. You were in my office. I thought you were crazy, and I use Muse to meditate. Not only that, I now have a neurotech startup, and I look up to you as a leader in the industry. So all to say, there may be hard times when people are like, no, 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 but persevere. You have to listen to the no's and take the feedback and learn and adapt and change, but you cannot let yourself be upset by those no's and you cannot let yourself be, pushed under by them. You just have to keep navigating and finding a way with the information you have and the best path available.
I think that's amazing advice because you were at the beginning of what turned out to be a huge industry boom of meditation, right? Meditation is all the craze now. There's, a billion meditation apps, and you were really at the beginning of it, and you had something that, people maybe didn't know exactly how exciting it was when you first got started. Thank you for sharing that. And I kind of want to build off that and talk about the shifts we're seeing in healthcare right now. Um, for any of our speakers, but Ronen, I'd love to hear from you if you have some thoughts on this. What are the most significant shifts you're seeing in healthcare right now, whether it's in digital health, AI diagnosis, remote patient monitoring, or otherwise? And yeah, for any of our speakers, where do you see the greatest white space in innovation?
Yeah, sure. I'll take a stab at that. So, um, in terms of what is having success in the market nowadays, the solutions that seem to be getting traction are those that have a very clear ROI story in terms of how this solution will save time for a key stakeholder in the clinical workflow, right? There needs to be a really clear ROI story, not just some impressive that it can do these sort of things, right? We've moved to a stage right now, I think, where um, AI has gotten to the point where it can really help save time, save resources in a lot of different areas. Um, but at the same time, the white space that's been created there is the fact that there are all these disparate solutions, and a lot of them don't speak to each other. And even within the same healthcare system, different centers may be using various solutions to solve the same sort of problem. And so there is opportunity to unify all that. How that's done, that's up to all of you to figure out. That's a big challenge. Um, but but yeah, that's my lens on it. That's where I see what's working and where there's a growing gap because of what's working.
Hmm. Definitely. I mean, I will say, roundtables like this where folks can interact and talk about, what businesses they're starting and see if there's any crossover opportunity. This is to hear from our speakers, but these events are also for, networking later in the event to see are there other businesses or, organizations that you can be working with and building off of. Um, Ariel, how do you think about the line between scientific integrity and consumer accessibility?
It's it's a very important question. So we've always been built on deep scientific integrity. Um, we have over 200 studies that have been done with MUSE. Um, so everything that we do has to be very strongly based on science. To your last question, like what's one of the trends that you're seeing in healthcare, and the biggest trend to me is the delivery of consumer healthcare solutions, not just clinical healthcare solutions. So, as you think about your business and how you're going to move forward, it's very hard to break into an actual healthcare system. It's really, really long and really, really painful. And the best way to move forward quickly is to offer the same solution to consumers, which is a completely different marketing story. So, to tie back to your question, you need to appeal to consumers in language they understand that solves their problems, and you need to be able to demonstrate that you have sufficient clinical validity and that you are a real tool. There are many things that exist that are smoke and mirrors, and it can be very hard to differentiate yourself from that. So clinical studies are the best way to do it. And one study that was done by you is not a great way to do it. So very early on, we unintentionally seeded our product with lots of different research groups who began using it for real research and publication. It takes 2 or 3 years for those publications to mature, but it's really worth doing now, getting as many publications as you can. And then as your own research group, take your findings and submit them to conferences, posters, etc., everything that you can do to get your findings published, and then be able to reflect those publications back on your website so that when you are speaking to consumers and when you're speaking to healthcare systems, both of them are going to require that level of validation. from hopefully a third party, but at least if it's your own research that's been third party peer reviewed, that's also valid.
Mhm. Now, both Ariel and Nikitha, you both touched on this, and when you were doing your, the talking about the beginning days of each of your businesses, and also when we were talking about, where what it's like, running a healthcare business in Canada. Um, Healthcare is one of the most regulated industries in the world. How do each of you balance the urgency to innovate quickly with the reality of a slow moving regulatory environment?
Yeah, for us, it's a interesting question because we've not actually needed to get FDA approved um, as an FDA regulated device. We currently exist in the general wellness category. We've spent 9 years thinking that we're going to do FDA clearance next year, and we've never needed to. We still believe we're going to do FDA clearance next year, and I don't know if next year comes if we're going to need to. So, we have our manufacturer who's able to do FDA. We have the consultants to do the quality assurance and all of these things, and we've never chosen to do that. A, because there's some amount of cost associated with it, but that's not the main barrier. The barrier is all of the QA systems and all of the headache that comes with having to be tied up in an FDA regulated product. And it turns out that we're really readily able to sell into healthcare without FDA clearance. And we're sold as a research device to researchers who use us for important clinical research and even pharma trials. And when you're doing research, that falls under research exemption, so you don't need FDA clearance. You just need to pass the IRB. So the regulatory environment is stultifying and awful, and you may not need to go down that path. So, really keep all of your options open in that domain.
Yeah, that's interesting. How about yourself, Nikitha? What has your journey been like?
100%, I would agree with Ariel. We understood that, gladly, we understood that early on in our path that we can avoid that process of, getting into regulatory, and even our product would fall under the wellness, right? So it doesn't necessarily require FDA approval or any regulatory side of things. So for that, we had to carefully understand what is the process, because definitely this product falls in the preventative side. To be considered in the healthcare, there is still a lot of gaps that needs to be understood by the professionals who are using it. Now, a lot of doctors, gastroenterologists, and physicians are using it who have private practice, definitely. But when it comes to healthcare system, because it's an organization, there is different layers to it that it has to cross through. So we might be there at some point, but definitely our purpose of being able to reach the right people who are going through the issues or suffering with the digestive or the metabolic, for example, are able to use the service, because not necessarily there is something like that available in the healthcare. But then when you are starting to do the business in that space, you have to understand where is the boundaries, and how you can navigate through, and immediately think of, what would be the option. So one such add-on was the insurance for us, that helped us to open the gates even for as a validation from the medical sector, and also being introduced it to the whether it's taken by physicians, gastroenterologists, in that space. So for that, they had to understand how the current systems are adapting to preventative side of things, or now you've mentioned about the AI or the other integration of digital health. Definitely there, as Ronen was saying, there's a lot of solutions that are being thrown at, but which would rightly fit with the system? Do they, or even training, right? Because when they have to integrate into the system, that structured system, which is there for centuries or decades together, that has to be changed. So how adaptive it is. So there are several things that needs to be considered and you have to just look for the parts, how to integrate that by using different options. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. I mean, just generally keep your options open, right? And be
Yes.
willing to adapt
Yeah.
and explore. I do see we have a question from Chemendi Swari. If please correct me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but I'd love to hear your question.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. So you can call me Chams as well. That's easier. So I'm an aspiring entrepreneur, literally at the idea stage of my venture and extensively networking and learning from uh, fellow founders. So my question is, we've been talking about FDA exclusively. So wherever I go, I listen to this term, hear this term, FDA. I'd like to understand more about Health Canada's requirements, if they are the same or which one is easier. This is my first question. I'll ask my second question soon.
I can jump in. So FDA and Health Canada's requirements are generally on par. So if you get FDA clearance, you can just apply it easily for Health Canada clearance and vice versa. There might be some small particularities, but it would really depend on like the niche of what your product is.
And it also depends on what your product would be, if it's device or or a drug or whatever it level. But comparatively, Health Canada is definitely stringent. So if you're going through Health Canada, if you're clear that you are accepted anywhere and everywhere, because definitely the process that you go through or have to wait, because I've seen closely my mentor company who are going through the process of FDA for their product, which is antimicrobial coating, which is there for 5 years, but then they have the potential, right? But you have to wait through or patients and try to identify what would be the alternative paths, or what would be the derivative products that is not really getting into the space of stopping you just with the Health Canada itself. So yeah, I would say a slightly stringent. Health Canada is definitely slightly stringent than the FDA when it comes to certain boards, right? So not necessarily every category. So you have to just look through what would be the options. But as Ariel mentioned, to a certain level, they overlap definitely with approvals, yes.
And FDA clearance is not just one big thing. So
Yeah.
if you are a device, are you a brand new device? Are you a device that's just being cleared based on the fact that you're similar to all these other devices that existed before?
Yeah.
That's very easy. Are you going for an indication to say that this thing actually solves this problem, this particular form of cancer? That's very difficult, because then you have to do large clinical trials. So, FDA is comprised of all of these different regulatory categories. And so, have a good chat with ChatGPT or Gemini and understand exactly what your technology is, what category it falls into, why you'd need FDA clearance, because you really may not. And one of the main reasons to get FDA clearance is to then unlock a CPT code. So a CPT code is what the insurance code that allows you to then be covered by insurance. But that's not straightforward, because different insurers have tons of different CPT codes. So, we originally thought like, oh, we get FDA cleared and then we'd be covered by insurance. But it is not a straightforward story. And then getting that coverage, who's going to cover you in what states for exactly what description of product and service, it's very complex. So I have a lot of conversations with Gemini or ChatGPT. We can recommend also like real good regulatory consultants. But before you spend money even on a regulatory consultant, just understand from
what category. Yeah,
what
100%.
category, why, what you need to do, and how hard it is. Because if, like for us, we're an EEG device. If we wanted to get a 510K that we were like every other EEG device, it's really simple. It would be like, I don't know, $30,000 in 6 months. It's like not a big deal. But then once we have that, we then had to do all the QA and become, part of the big machine. So even though getting the clearance was simple, having it and maintaining it was not simple and not necessarily beneficial. And it still wouldn't allow us to access billing codes from insurance. So you need to think, it's complicated to think through the whole story. It's not a simple answer.
Thank
Right.
you.
This is really helpful. Yeah. Thank you both of
Do you have
you.
a second question, you said?
Sorry. Yeah. the second question
Yeah.
is for Ariel specifically.
Sure.
Ariel, you were telling about sharing your product with different research groups so that they included them in study. It's like more of a validation from their end that for its effectiveness, right? So how would you balance between gathering those evidences and protecting your IP if it is a novel service or product?
So I have a bit of a radical stance on this, which is don't bother trying to protect your IP because if somebody wants to do it, they're just going to do it anyways. But doing it is a lot of work and a lot of energy and a lot of stress, so probably nobody's going to want to do it, so don't worry about it. So, entrepreneurs are always like, I don't want to tell somebody my idea because they're going to do it. But it's like if somebody was about to quit their job and devote their entire life to your idea, like maybe they'd just partner with you and you could do it together. But it's so unlikely that that person's ever going to do anything with that idea. So you're much better off to talk and share your idea and try to gather support wherever you can. Because unless you're sharing your idea with a direct competitor, they're unlikely to take it from you. So like I've had meetings with Samsung, so I've had meetings with Sony and Samsung and like LG, like flown to Korea, sat there in boardrooms around them. They've asked me things like, send us the schematics of your electronics. It's like, we're never going to do that. Come on. But like Samsung, who's known for stealing ideas, they'd still never go forward and actually do the thing because there's so many layers of avoidance and like so much difficulty to actually bring a product to market. Even if their group for years thinks they're going to build one of those things, it'll never actually come to market. And that's somebody with a ton of resources. So like no researcher is ever going to actually take your thing and steal it. So don't worry about it. Just go forward, share, communicate, and use that communication to gather as much support as you can.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you, Ariel.
Thank you both so much for taking on those questions and thank you for the question. I want to get into talking a little bit about funding because that is always the number one question that we at Startup Canada get from our entrepreneurial community, rightfully so. So, Ronen, I'm going to start with yourself. So healthcare startups often require longer runways before revenue. How should founders think about their fundraising strategy and what are investors looking for that's unique to this sector?
Great question. It's true that healthcare companies do often require longer runways. And in terms of fundraising, companies should be really thinking about milestones that they're hoping to unlock rather than the amount of time they're hoping to survive, right? Because um, things inevitably take longer and they cost more than people think. Sales cycles are always longer than you think they're going to be. Pilots always take time to convert. Clinical validation may be needed in a lot of cases. And if there's a reimbursement or procurement play, then that can materially lag adoption, right? So in terms of fundraising mindset, that's something that's really important. Typically, early stage startup that raises enough money for a year ends up running out of that capital in the healthcare space before they're able to convince the next stage of investors that there is a true problem they've identified, that their solution actually works, they're able to get money for it, and that they can actually navigate the regulatory landscape. So that's a common mistake that we see companies, especially in Canada, underraise in their first round, and they end up needing bridge after bridge after bridge to get to the next round, which dilutes them unnecessarily. Um, and that's quite different than, let's say, just a typical SaaS solution. Um, so the mindset going into fundraising is quite different. Another thing to note is that early stage entrepreneurs, regardless of industry, but especially in this industry, because they know that they're going to need so much runway, end up looking for non-dilutive capital really early. And the mistake that they make is that they start focusing too much energy in trying to get access to this capital before they're ready for it. Um, so that's a common mistake and one that, when we're advising early stage founders, they say, we have, 15 applications out. We're hoping they land. We ask them, how much time have you spent focusing on preparing those applications versus actually building your product, improving product market fit, right? Um, so that's my take on it.
Yeah, no. Yeah, Ariel, please go ahead.
I'm going to jump in. So I agree with everything that Ronan said, except for the last point,
Mhm.
because our first $50,000 came from IRAP, and probably our second $50,000 came from Shred, and our third $50,000 probably came from IRAP again. And that was critical money because we couldn't get investor money. We use getgrants.ca. Paul from Get Grants. He
Mhm.
wrote our grants for us. He writes our shred, very reasonably priced, and so we didn't have to spend the money working on those grants. But it actually is really important to apply for those grants because it's easier to get grant money than it is to get investors.
Mm.
Right. I'm talking about after, like, beyond the very initial little bit of money, what we see often is companies applying for multi-million dollar grants when there's no chance in hell that they're going to actually get them. And these are typically the companies that are trying to do it themselves rather than working with a specialist who can advise them on, you know what, you're probably not ready for this right now. There's a reason why the requirements are in there. Don't think that the requirements don't apply to you. We see quite a few of those.
Right. Nathan, I see you have your hand up if you had a question you'd like to ask.
Yeah, so on that note, I agree with you, and a lot of what I'm seeing so far is the requirements for this non-dilutive funding are shifting towards later stage companies. That seems to be my experience and the trend, at least. Where my personal experience is coming from academia and straight out of grad school and with a university project. Um, where would you recommend looking for those first dollars for people who don't necessarily come with too much personal capital support or anything like that? Like what would be your first um, step to getting, say, a year of runway so that you can prove that product and prove that product market fit?
I would look for So one thing that's also really important to note is that shift recently, right? The way things were done 10, 15 years ago and the way money was awarded in the early stages is different than it is right now. A lot of those taps that were flowing freely 10, 15 years ago aren't flowing as freely anymore. Um, so my recommendation would be to get other signals that would show to these funding agency that you have really thought through the key things that a typical investor would ask, that you really understand the problem, that you do have at least early semblance of product market fit, um, that you have people lined up to pay for your product, right, before it's even created, because it solves enough of a problem for them. Um, Once you have enough of those, then there are some government agencies that may be willing to write a small check. But an important thing to note is non-dilutive funding, government funding, it's not free money. It's another big misconception, right? It's always a co-investment from that agency that you oftentimes don't have to repay towards a project. So, for instance, if IRAP puts $50,000 in, they would expect it to be towards a $100,000 project. So you would still have to come up with a $50,000 somehow on your own. Um, there are very, very, very few opportunities in Canada that are truly free money, right? It's oftentimes a co-investment in a project. And so um, the my recommendation is when you're starting out, focus on the three F's, I call them: family, friends, and fools. Um, People who look at you and they believe in you, they think that you might be onto something, but they're not those traditional, very sophisticated investors who are going to do intensive due diligence that there's no way you'll pass, right? And so once you get that initial capital and have some runway, focus on making sure you get enough market signals that your product really has a chance. And then that's a good time to get those government agencies to start talking to you.
And I would also say
Thanks.
become friends with the reps at those government agencies. So OCA, IRAP, you're going to have your ITA. So become friends with them, and they'll really help guide you and help you understand what you need to do to apply for the funding opportunity and if you're likely to get it. And they're the ones that do part of the recommendation, so they'll help you. So use third parties and to write the grants and become friends with the ITAs and the various reps.
Can I ask a quick question? So I can't find the button for the raise my hand, and I'm usually a pretty tech savvy guy, so I've been looking. I don't know where that button is. Ariel, your story on Muse is great. Thank you for sharing that. We're a little further along. Like we've been successful with things like OCI has been great, and Cabby and the Baycrest team are fantastic. We haven't had any success with IRAP. We're kind of like a little bit too early on the TRL for them. They're kind of like we really want to help, probably when we don't need the help anymore. So, Ronen, we've seen that bar move as well. Other resources like My Tax for helping offset headcount have been fantastic for us. Uh, I'm very curious about, like, as we look to start to scale, we just closed our first national reseller and closed a deal that could be quite significant for us. So we're pretty excited. Now I got to go finish building a product overseas. So that's keeping me up at night, trying to scale for that. But I'm very curious about any kind of investor events or speed dating, so to speak, as we look to think about, a significant seed round so we can begin to supercharge our growth. So I would be curious, Amanda or Ronen, or like if there is within the Startup Canada ecosystem, if there is events or anything I should be keeping on my team's radar that we should be thinking of participating in as we start to build our investor funnel.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can take that to begin as to where Startup Canada can help you. So, when it comes to potential events where you can meet with investors or items like that, um, we if you're on our emailing list, we will if our partners are hosting any events like that or we know of them in the community, we will email them out. What we do at Startup Canada is we host pitch competitions. And so this year, our pitch competitions, we host a national pitch competition and then pop-up ones. Our national pitch competitions, if you win in your city, you win $8,500, but then you move on to the grand finale where you could win $30,000. And then the pop-up pitch competitions, you win $15,000 for your business. This year, we're visiting Halifax, Victoria, Mississauga, Calgary, and Ottawa. So if you're based out of any of those cities, you could pitch there. But then we also do host a virtual pitch competition as well. So when it comes to money that we're actually able to give out, it's pretty exclusive to the pitch competitions. But then if there's any meetings or investor events or things like that that we know of the community, we'll share them. But Ronan, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that from a 0 to 1 strategies perspective.
Yeah, it one good group to get involved with and follow is, depending on your stage, is Techtio and or PureScale. PureScale is for slightly later stage companies, but they host events coast to coast as well. And they're regularly hosting either pitch competitions or things adjacent to that. Um, it would be great if there was a centralized resource if where you could find where all the pitch competitions are happening. That's a interesting
Well, no,
concept.
so PureScale is one I hadn't been aware of. Thank you, Ronan. Techtio for sure. But yeah, and you see, like, there's a lot of investor events, and we just want to make sure, time and resources are finite. So we just want to make sure, short of jumping on a plane and Ariel doing what you did and heading down to the valley and booking a bunch of meetings in a week, if there were a few good events, there's certainly something that the team, as we build out our plan with help from the AC, that we'd be looking to participate in as we look to meet investors.
Mm.
Yeah, I would say like that is something that we do our best to do at Startup Canada is we try to collect all of these resources and put them in one place in our resource guide and in our emails. So also if anyone in the chat knows of any upcoming events, feel free to share them. I mean, sharing resources is a huge aspect of what we try to do. So I would say, keep an eye on our newsletter and on our socials where we can share some of those events. While we're talking about funding, Nikitha and Ariel, I would love to hear your stories as to what your funding journeys have been. Ariel, you touched on it a little bit when you were speaking earlier, but with Nucliq and MUSE, how did you, get your initial funding? Did you find investors, grants, or did you bootstrap it?
You want to go ahead, Ariel?
Sure. So, I mean, my journey started a long time ago, and the funding landscape was different. So I went through AngelList. AngelList was really big at the time, and emailed out to a whole bunch of angels. I got one from there. I went to a conference in Silicon Valley called Wisdom 2.0 on the Google campus, and I found an investor there. I emailed every investor in Boston that I could find the email of, because once I was going to speak at MIT, and I'm like, I should pitch to investors. And I didn't find any investors there, but I found some sympathetic Canadians. So if you're looking to pitch to anyone beyond Canada, which I recommend doing, investors in Silicon Valley and New York and Boston and Hong Kong all are happy to invest in Canadian companies. They actually see us as competitive and meaningful investments. There's not taxation barriers. So really, I highly recommend looking outside of Canada for investment. They tend to be more enthusiastic. I mean, if your market is only going to be in Canada, then they're not going to be excited, but it's worth doing. I got on the plane and I went to San Francisco, and I met some people at a dinner, and they introduced me to other people, and I asked for, like I just kept going. And then I also got Canadian government support. And then we also started to get contracts. So, I mean, it's really, really, really hard to get investor money these days. And investors are very shy in their investments. They have a ton of deal flow. It's very, very, very difficult to actually get investor money. If you're going to go and pitch to investors, make sure that you've gone through an incubator of some form, whether it's through a RIC or through a private incubator enterprise, because they're going to get all of your ducks in a row, get your pitch deck in a row, force you to go through the discipline of understanding your market, force you through the discipline of making your website and getting your first customers. All of that is, table stakes before you walk into an investor. Once you have that, there's lots of demo days and pitch competitions. Those are great places where you also get feedback. You have to be as stingy as you can when you get your money, because you need to make it last a really long time. And really, the sooner you can get customers, the better off you are, because that both gets you money and demonstrates to everybody that it's worth investing in you. I have raised, on my own, I raised about 18 million in venture. Then I stepped down as CEO. So that's when I was CEO. Stepped down as CEO, and then we raised, I don't know, another third, maybe we've raised 40 million total. But in the last years, we've gone out to the market over and over and over again and haven't been able to raise money. And we're a very well-known company with good revenue, with impressive stories and all these things. And so the landscape really has changed, and we're trying to navigate where it is that we find our next pockets of capital. And we've had to really just abandon the idea of raising money from VC. We're able to get bridge rounds from our existing investors, but we've really just focused on building revenue, and cutting expenses everywhere we can in order to just keep growing without investment.
Thank you, Ariel. Nikitha, what has the funding journey been like for you?
So for the early stage, we were very intentional about considering non-dilutive. We were able to generate some friends or a close, friends. So some close network who has trust, right? So trust is something that helps you to initially support your growth journey, and that plays a huge role. And of course, the pitch competitions was something else that helped us to leverage the non-dilutive funding. So, and our focus was mainly to bring the product to life and also look at where we can start looking at that early revenue. And we have started right in the midst of pandemic, which had a lot of demand supply issues, or even trying to navigate through R&D, which took us 2 years. I'm sure if it wasn't pandemic, it might have been over a year, but definitely we had that challenges during that time. But for funding, we have always, even in the recent times, we have combined non-dilutive with dilutive resources. But as Ariel is saying, in the current times, definitely there is challenges to get the capital. And still we have the strategy of combining non-dilutive with the dilutive resources, but still there is a huge considering the geopolitics, considering in healthcare how things have changed just from pandemic to now, that more of a digital health, more of a AI inclusion, and there is a bit of gap of how the current scenario in the sciences is to invest the money in, and also to the point of trusting the companies at the early stages. How would you know, a company which is coming from a different place, and we are to put the money with that trust, right? So as Ariel was mentioning about incubators, that's true that when you are going through a resource that is trustworthy and then has been established across, whether it's in Canada or the US, that helps you to bring in front of investors, and then rest is about your product and yourself. But then just giving that platform itself would help you when you're going through the networks. And to the point, I think one of the attendees was asking about building the relationship, right? Even if you're not raising. So you start looking at and having that conversations at very early on, even when you're not looking for money, and maintaining those relationships, giving that updates would definitely help to grow those relationships, because trust is what you're building, right? A lot of cases when people don't know you, it's hard to put the money unless you are a very big VC, and then you are at that stage. And even your company at a level where the uptake is high, and then you're seeing that you're growing rapidly. But when you're still at the early stages and then trying to reach or keep track of your early cash flow or early stage navigation, I think having those relationship with the networks, whether it's the angel networks or the VCs, and having the right set of group, because identifying that right investor, because it's like a long-term relationship, right? Which is very important, and it's like you have to do the dating until you find the right match. So you keep on have those conversations even if it's not required at the moment, so that they connect you or they participate. So that definitely helps. So yeah, that's our story so far. So but 2 years into the R&D, we were able to launch the product, and our revenue definitely is contributing towards our cash flow, which is helping us to sustain even in the times when we see that the cash flow is a bit low. But then our focus is definitely identifying that customer and then bringing the money. I think that's the right money. Your customer, getting the money from your customer is the right money. But then if you're even earlier than that in R&D stage, I would say try to identify your close friends, family, or the supports that you have that help you to leverage. And pitch money is definitely adds to that, because it's similar to grant money, but then you have to work towards winning it in order to leverage your product development or R&D side of things. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing. We are just about to approach our breakout room time, but before we do, to round out our conversation we've had on funding, I'm wondering, Ronen, can you walk us through how 0 to 1 strategies may be able to help entrepreneurs navigate government incentives for Canadian businesses?
Sure. So, a little bit about my team at 0 to 1 Strategic. We're a team of about 45. Most of the team is made up of either former auditors or audit managers from CRA on the tax credit side, or from folks who used to be in leadership positions at these various government agencies. right? We've brought these folks in because what I realized when I was building my tech businesses was that relationships, as Ariel mentioned, are everything, right? You need to know and the people on the other side, and you need to build a relationship with them because they have way more demand for their capital than they have supply. And so they need to make hard decisions. And the the easiest way for you to get capital repeatedly from some of these sources is by having them build a relationship with you, trust you. And I actually would like to just share an anecdote. Um, I've been working with IRAP for about 13 years. I sold my last business in 2023, and my IRAP ITA didn't know at the time that I sold it, reached out to me because I hadn't been in touch in a couple of months. I usually stay in touch with my IRAP rep every few months and said, Ronen, I've earmarked some capital for you. Let's discuss the project that we want to work on, right? And it was about, I think, $600,000 that he had earmarked. And I told him his name was Ian. He's since retired. Ian, thank you so much for your support. You've been amazing. I have some great news to share with you. We actually sold the business. He was super happy for us and said, I still have this money earmarked for you. What are you building next? Can you use the money towards that? Right? So it gets to a point with these government agencies where once you build a relationship and you build that trust, they what matters more is the trust and the relationship that you build than what your business is actually like. That matters what your business is doing, but that relationship and that trust is the thing that overrides everything, right? That's why it's really important to build those relationships. And my company focuses on helping our clients build those relationships because we know that's how you win funding.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Ronan. Okay, now is our time to head into the breakout rooms. While we set these up, I'm going to go through what is to be expected in these. The breakout rooms are to provide you with intentional networking with each other, sort of like speed dating. I feel like we've said speed dating a couple times on this call, and so that's what this is kind of going to be like. As presumably you're all working in the healthcare space, this is the time to get to know one another. Perhaps there's someone in the room that can help you with a roadblock you're currently facing, or they could provide you an introduction to someone. This is where you can start that relationship building Ronan was just speaking about. We do ask that everyone ensures or you ensure that everyone gets a chance to speak and you're respectful to everyone in the room. We're going to do 3 rounds of breakout rooms for about 10 minutes each. The speakers will also be in some of these rooms with you. We are going to stop recording the session now. The rooms will be completely private, not recorded. So you're going to see a pop-up on your screen very soon that invites you to a breakout room. So just join your assigned breakout room, and then we will see you back here in 10 minutes where we reassign you to a new room.